What a year. When I think about what was happening for me a year ago versus now, it's like light and day on a human level, health situation. And yet, when I think of other things, it's like the year has flown by. Time is a human construct, but geez, it's actually overall quite a difference when I think about it. It's also been 10 years since I graduated from university. And while I didn't foresee much of what's happening these days, I'm really happy about where I am and who I get to work with. I've been embracing more of how my brain works this year and making it work for me, but also working on healing some parts of my body, and it's really changed how things are working out for me. There's so much more room for improvement, so it's not like I'm perfect, but I'm just feeling so much better overall than last year. To summarize it simply for you, I was in pain at the start of the year. By May, that had stopped, which is magical because that's around 9 years of being in pain every day. Naturally, at the start, I was worried it was temporary, but apparently not. I've had to adjust to it, which might sound odd, but there's some grief wrapped into like wishing I'd known earlier, of course, but also having to manage all the things I'm doing to work on what's happening and then still setting aside time for rest because I still need it, but I won't necessarily be as forced to do it. I just have so much more mental space now for like fun things like books, sewing, craft projects, everything, just because I don't have this thing that kind of sucks the energy from me, which probably sounds more icky than it actually was, but I definitely have more time and energy for stuff now. And the stuff I am doing for my health still is mostly temporary. It did take over at times, but really because I noticed I had a bit of space coming up, I would schedule specific concentrated efforts for my health into those times. What's different to years gone by is that this stuff was working. So in other years, I might have dedicated time, but it didn't improve my symptoms whatsoever. So while it was a challenge this time, it also paid off. It mostly affected work in more of a mental way, just for my mental capacity, and that I had less interest in throwing myself into work because work served as kind of like a distraction before. But it's just nice to not have to factor in all the potential issues that might come up. I'm not cured, but there's just way less pain happening. I have also made some adjustments in my mindset because I'm naturally hypercritical while trying to not be hypocritical, like for no reason. Often my recommendations for clients though are things that wouldn't necessarily suit my brand or me, but do suit the goals of who I'm working with and how they operate. This used to give me imposter syndrome, but it actually shouldn't. And if I explain myself, the person I'm working with or talking to, or even who's reading a blog post, also shouldn't think I'm being hypocritical. The coaching that I'm doing allows for that extra time the most, but it's also possible in the strategy options that I offer as well. It's not as simple when you're doing done for you services. It's kind of like the cobbler's shoes, but the cobbler doesn't actually like need to wear heels to resole a pair of pumps. And sometimes the cobbler purposefully wears old shoes when they're working, so that they can wear their best shoes out to dinner, you know? So even just focusing on talking about people finding their own approach, which naturally won't be the same as mine or anyone else, basically, that has helped a lot. My services both can be and should be a stepping stone. So they bridge the gap between doing it all yourself to having trusted guidance to growing your own team with more confidence. You better understand how the work is done, why it's done that way, and how the decisions can be made, how a strategy can be created, but then evolved, which leads to an ease in holding others accountable for their work. I've also wanted my clients to graduate from working with me, but now my services truly have it built in. My quote unquote new services were actually added last year, but I've removed some services slowly. So now I just offer coaching and strategy. It's working for me right now, but I can't totally say that this is the last iteration. And with a pivot like this, it's just natural that there will be a bit of building to do to fill my roster and build that more consistent funnel, because I will work with more clients in any given year versus what I was doing before. For example, a way of kind of like breaking this down for you is that I don't have a group coaching program. I'd have to figure out how that would work, but also I don't have the audience size currently where I could fill a group program with people who have a shared problem or at a similar stage or whatever. So for now, it's all one-on-one, and I have a framework that I've got working, and it's just fully tailored to the one business. But I'd never say never, obviously, to a coaching program. Certainly possible, but not really with my audience size. First, I would want to build it to working with more clients one-on-one, and then I'll worry about adding anything else. But that's just kind of like an example for you to see how that growth and volume would make a difference over time with this kind of a pivot. There's a ways to go. So once I have more to share on what's working for me, I can do a little update maybe somewhere in next year. I love helping business owners work on their own knowledge, and that's so unique to each person and how they operate. This is actually why I added the coaching and strategy services in the first place. I had a couple of clients whose businesses shifted and they no longer needed me to, say, manage their ads, but I'd been running their ads for 3 years and they'd actually learned very little about how to do it themselves. They understood why I did many of the things that I did because I'd explain it in reports every month that I sent them of what I was doing, but they didn't know how to spot the opportunities and failings themselves, and reading it in a report is very different to doing it. And then their business model changed, or they'd go on maternity leave or have someone in their family who was ill, but they have a business size where when things, when they're off, everything stops or slows down. So naturally they didn't want to pay me to run the ads, but they actually couldn't easily leave the ads on because they didn't know how to manage them either. So just a few different client instances like that where I kind of just like spotted a need. And then once I started doing it, I kind of figured out that this was really more my thing than anything else. So I just slowly made the change. That opened my mind to how a course might not quite cover everything they needed. And if they replaced like 12 months of ads management with coaching, they'd be better prepped for the future across more than just their ads. It also works for my previous clients that might have brought someone in-house because I can work with them and that new hire on this knowledge building and continuing to evolve and grow their marketing strategy. Part of this was figuring out how I could work with them, especially to help them learn, but also what resources and things I could create so that we make the most of the time on the calls, because I can give them those extras where I just send it to them afterwards. When I did this pivot, I didn't just pull the rug out from under my clients, so there's still some crossover, but going forward, I just have those specific 3 options. Not to say I don't work with other people, but the timing and the project would have to be right. So we'd discuss it and I'd make a proposal for them rather than it being a package that I already have. This sort of works in a way where I had a realization that there can be me, Emma, and the brand Honeypot Digital. So Honeypot Digital can be about the strategy and the coaching, but Emma can take up contracts, or I could have some other personal project, and it doesn't have to fit under the Honeypot Digital brand. It can just be another Emma project, and that's okay too. What I've found was that those who are neurotypical still find it handy to see things through my lens, where I just think differently to them, but when I explain it and help them break down their marketing or a hurdle they're working through, it just makes sense to them and it breaks down a wall. When I work with people who are neurodivergent, I can look at things based on their needs, even though they're probably different to my own with ADHD, but I better understand that the usual like rah-rah stuff isn't going to cut it for them, but that deadlines, accountability, maybe some other accountability or accounting for different little things that they might need to do, I can just see that differently to other people. I found it's also relatable for people who might be neurotypical but have something else going on. So they have young kids, they have a chronic illness, their audience has some super specific thing, or they're still really involved in the delivery of their offer, so they're not full-time in marketing and business development. They're juggling 10 hats in any one day. Maybe they're running their business as a side hustle. Different situations like that where I can easily fit in with them. There's plenty of situations like that where they're doing things that aren't necessarily like the way that either they've done it before or that they've seen done, so they just need to work through things in a different kind of capacity to figure it out. It also allows me to work with people across the whole range of my marketing knowledge, which has been really interesting, like covering multiple platforms and tactics all in one call, just based on what they're working on. I work with clients who don't even know what email marketing truly is, like they don't know any of the terminology or which platforms or anything like that because they've never signed up for an email list themselves or run one before. And then I also have other clients who have lots of content knowledge but no SEO experience. So we can take the knowledge that they already have and kind of like apply it to that different element and kind of see how things would fit in and where their approach might be different, either because of that experience that they've got or just because like that's how their brain works. I used to work with people who mostly understood the individual type of marketing that they'd hired me for because that was what made them look for someone to work with in the first place. But often they didn't have any experience of how to do it, and then it would take a lot of time potentially to gain their trust to spend more on me doing more platforms and just things to diversify what I was doing for that client. The coaching and strategy services allow us to explore without it costing any extra. We just fit it all into the same call time, which makes us so much more flexible, so I can cover more options with people, and then it helps them to find more of their approach basically in a shorter amount of time with the same investment. The strategy intensive that I do are the one offer that I have that's really specific. So that allows me to dive in really deep with a client on one specific area, which keeps things interesting. The blog, podcast, social media mix that I have makes so much more sense to me with my current service menu. So basically a creative block kind of fell down once I pulled down some of those other services. That's when I knew it was the right move for me. And then since this business is just me, I don't have a team that I work with consistently. So if something doesn't make sense for me to do, it inherently brings friction because there's not someone to just delegate it to. My phrase for this past year was less is more. That's why I trimmed down my services while also streamlining the things I needed to keep up to date for those services. I also cut down on all the softwares I use, partially because not doing some things anymore, but also just by looking at whether I really needed them. It was almost like lifestyle creep in a way, like, oh, that software would save me X time or make something simpler, but then you kind of don't use it as much as you thought you would, but then you never get around to pulling the plug on it. I also really trimmed down my personal belongings. I sold so many old clothes I didn't wear anymore, books I didn't need to have a copy of anymore, extra kitchen stuff, some old tech that still works fine, but it just didn't need to sit in the drawer. So many things I had either just outgrown, weren't my style anymore, or that I could live without. It was incredibly freeing. There's still some things to trim down, I think now, just like products to use up or whatever, but it's stuff that would end up in a landfill. So I want to use it till its last dying day. I also slimmed down my tech in terms of where things go, because most of my stuff now goes in Notion. It also meant like less notebooks, so less, where did I write that thing down? I'm still figuring out new dashboards and things for quick reference or whatever, but it's just handy not having things in 3 different places and they don't fully integrate with each other. So it's like, where did I write that thing? I also feel like I've had less cares this year. With bigger things going on, the little things don't affect me as much. I've just been finding what feels good and going from there. Making note of anything that doesn't feel good or that I'm avoiding and like figuring out why, so that things flow better throughout the week. So that's been really good. Sometimes that's just that I need to follow my own damn systems. I would occasionally forget I had these processes and systems, and then when I return to them, it's like, oh, they work. Thank you, Captain Obvious. Notion helped that a lot too. It just takes the mental load out of stuff because there's no figuring stuff out. I'm not reinventing the wheel for the millionth time because I've already done this so many times before and I've figured out mostly what works. This is episode 75 of the podcast. I feel like I learned a lot about how I operate in relation to the podcast this year, and I've gotten used to the consistency and batching a bit more so I don't get burnt out on it. It's not perfect, so I have a lot of things to work on in the next year, but I've made progress with not needing like a big break at any point. Previously, if I've done seasons before, I would do like 15 episodes and then need to take a break because I basically had burnt out on it or didn't really have as much time as I wanted to spend on it, so I kind of had to get back to other things. Through the podcast, I've had some amazing conversations and I've been able to implement things for myself or have a bit more insight into how some people might look at things. This year has been a big one personally, but my business has adjusted along with me along the way. I'm really excited about the new year and everything I have planned. I hope everyone has an amazing break, and I'll see you back here in the new year. Thank you for joining me for this episode of the Digital Hive podcast. If you're enjoying the podcast, I'd love it if you could share it with a friend or on Instagram and tag me at Honeypot Digital. To find out more about Honeypot Digital and the work I do, or to find more episodes of the podcast and handy tips for small businesses marketing online, head to honeypotdigital.com.